The following program is produced by the Tech Talk Radio Network.
Welcome to another episode of Tech Talk Radio. I'm Andy Taylor, and we are the show that talks about computers, technology, and the internet. Well, Justin and Sean are out today, but we were talking about the show this week. We've got a really great show planned for you. And if you look at the shows over the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about the different technology we've been seeing. And you think about it. I mean, you've got Chat GPT, you've got a vocal AI, you've got video AI, which still to this day, I don't get it. I'm seeing it. I'm thinking, why do I think this is real? But there's something that makes me feel a little uncanny about it. But it is something we've been talking about, and something else that has come up. And I have a lot of people asking me, Andy, what does this mean? All we needed was one. And then we will go from there. James Chernowski is going to tell us all about it. James is a senior tech and innovation policy analyst at Americans for Prosperity. He's written about so many things, antitrust, commercial drones, and other tech and innovative issues. And this has become an issue that is a talking point right now. James, thanks for coming on Tech Talk Radio.
Thanks for having me.
James, we're obviously talking about the state of Utah and how the governor there in the state of Utah, it's Spencer Cox, has decided that it's important to restrict social media for use in children under the age of 18. The question I get asked the most is how? How is this even possible for happening here in the U.S.? And what is it all about?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do know Governor Cox. He's a good man, and he did have good intentions when he was trying to go and pursue this path. It's just that we disagree with this particular solution that was proposed and ultimately signed into law. But basically what the bill does there is that it aims to restrict children's ability to use social media under the age of 18 in the state of Utah without parental consent. And then additionally, it would require those users to go and verify their age. The way that this would be accomplished is, via either submitting government ID, so think like a driver's license, a social security number, some other form of government identification, or you'd have to go and submit yourself to facial recognition scans that would engage in what's called age estimation to see whether or not you pass muster to qualify for being on these social media services. And there are trade-offs with both. They're both pretty alarming, and it's really bad stuff. Even if we want to protect kids, and that's really the nexus of what's driving it is. They want to protect children. There's plenty of statistics that are coming out that are showing, increased suicide ideation amongst teenagers, particularly with teenage girls. And I think that that's an extraordinarily serious issue. But I think where there's conflation here is that they're basically putting everything on the tech companies in terms of what's the cause of it. And that's just not true. I don't think that's an accurate representation of the facts. It's not also to say that social media has no role to play. But I think that it's just being outweighted here right now. And so that's why you're seeing these kinds of proposals getting put forward, is because these lawmakers, rather than wait for Congress to do something, they feel like they have to do something and they don't want to wait for Congress. So we have states that are starting to weigh in on this matter. And that's going to present different kinds of issues as we look forward.
James, I'm thinking about this, though, with this. Has this kind of started with the whole TikTok and, the idea that TikTok should be banned on federal devices and even at state levels, depending on different states? Is that kind of where it started and then it suddenly shifted and we got to protect the kids? Let's put a ban on all social media. And they're not talking about only Snapchat and, TikTok. They're also talking about Facebook, anything that the kids would connect to, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. With the way that bill was written, I believe the user threshold set at only around 5 million. So it would go and implicate a lot of different social media platforms, if you will. And some of them are not even the ones that you would normally think about. So obviously Facebook is there, but also like Discord, which is just like a gaming community, Reddit type kind of application, if you will, where it's about setting servers with local communities, et cetera. Right. That would get implicated if you're a big hiker. I know that there's an app out there that I'm blanking on that goes and would get implicated by this as well. So it really does go well beyond what the original social media is. Now, as to whether or not it's TikTok that kind of drove all of it, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that it was something that just kind of added fuel to the fire, if you will, especially as there were increasing revelations about TikTok, whether it's privacy and national security concerns from the Chinese, CCP ownership link, right, or on the flip side, seeing the types of content that might pop up on there, which certainly I think have animated certain people, whether it's seeing transgender content or whatever,
Right.
on the platform. It might go and drive people as well to want to do something there because they think that it's, having a negative impact on kids. And that's, like I said, the nexus there ultimately is that they feel like these platforms are having a negative impact on kids, and therefore we must do something.
Now, how is this going to affect anybody with a VPN? I mean, when I think of the technology, I wanted to watch that special on Gordon Lightfoot that was only available in Canada. So it popped onto the VPN and I was able to do that. Well, how would that be bypassed? Because you don't have to say you're in Utah. You could say, well, I'm in Arizona, right? And there's no way to triangulate or pinpoint that. Will parents just say, yeah, go ahead, kid? You know how to use the VPN. Go ahead. There are some parents, I'm sure, that are not on board with this.
Yeah, no, and that was certainly one of the default things that we brought up right off the bat when we were talking about the bill is that, from an enforceability standpoint, it's really impossible to do that with the advent of VPNs. There's language in the bill that explicitly says that these companies cannot assist or allow people to go and circumvent these controls that are there. But at the end of the day, Facebook's not going to invest in preventing the use of VPNs, and nor should they.
Yeah.
There's a lot of massive benefits to using VPNs for people. So I think that that's just like a practical problem that comes with it when we're talking about whether or not it can be enforced. But there are all other kinds of pretty controlling elements in this bill as well. Like as a default in this bill, for example, your child could not utilize social media between the hours of 10:30 p.m. and 6:30 a.m. as the default. Now, parents could go and opt out of that and choose their own separate controls, etc. But that was what the state of Utah would require now come March of 2024 when that bill becomes enforceable, is that the default settings on your phone would require that social media can't get access between those hours. And that just seems so ludicrous to me,
Yeah, that's going to be it's a burden not only on the people providing that service like Facebook, like Snapchat, Instagram, but also then now the actual carriers as well as the manufacturers of those smartphones to make sure it's written in either iOS or Android. That's all going to have to be written in, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And I mean, there's already the phone manufacturers themselves are dealing with a whole separate issue of a lot of states that are pursuing what are called porn filter bill laws, if you will. That's trying to mandate that all their devices come with these filtering settings turned on at default. And that just, it has another practical problem of that's just not how phones work. Like they get assembled somewhere out of the country, they get shipped into Seattle where the software is then installed, and then they get shipped all across the country from Seattle if we're talking about, let's say, an iPhone, right? And, you can't go and require something like that in the way that they're expecting. So I think that, again, more often than not, what this comes down to is that there's a problem that's being identified and, the solutions that are being proposed are anything but what would actually go and tackle the core issue here. And so, whether we're talking about kids being on social media or on porn sites and worries there, this is an educational issue, right?
Yeah.
We need to educate parents to be better informed about the tools that are at their disposal because there are tools there,
right?
Both within the platforms themselves and on their devices and applications that are ancillary to anything that is existing on these platforms or devices. So there are lots of things that are available there. So that's one side of the education spectrum. The second side is for kids, because, again, we're worried about kids and their mental health. I think that's a completely valid conversation. But what we need to do there is we need to educate kids and have them basically do what I would call social media literacy, because there are positive benefits to use of social media. Kids felt better about using social media during the pandemic. It helped them stay connected with their friends, feel connected to their community, and feel more comfortable with expressing themselves one way or another. I think those are all positive things that we can't ignore. But there are also downsides to using social media too. And if we do social media literacy, we can possibly mitigate against that downside. Third is really on the companies for education, where they have to actually go and reach out to the parents that might not necessarily be as online in order to go and educate them, again, to the tools that are available to them and what they're doing to try to keep their kids safe, because not every parent is, available 24/7, let's say, to go and navigate an online world, right? So I think that there's a lot of education that ultimately needs to be done here.
I think a lot of parents, James, just throw their hands up in the air because it can be really confusing for a lot of parents. But, another concern, and I agree with you 100%, there is an issue and it does need to be tackled when it comes to teens and social media. There's bullying. There's, the idea that you have to have more likes and all that. And it's to understand the self-worth of the child. But how about the teens that are already on social media now that have done well with it and do have a pretty good friends base of support. They get together, they do homework over it. How is that going to impact them?
Well, imagine now, especially in this setting where you have kids that are excelling and can go and join college technically under 18, right? You have some kids who are starting their first year of college as early as 16 or 17 years old, depending on what exactly is going on there. And what exactly happens if you have this kind of proposal where it's like all of a sudden you go from having 0 to 100, right? Like, I feel like that would make no sense.
Yeah.
And also, furthermore, if you're already an existing kid, why should your rights all of a sudden change, because of this law? Like, that doesn't make sense. Kids do have First Amendment rights. It's not necessarily as far as, let's say, what a full adult would expect because they're kids. But at the same time, we can't ignore that either. So I think that it does present unique problems. And also, furthermore, I think that you're closing off opportunities for kids who are actually very tech savvy because they're growing up as digital natives from figuring out how to leverage that technology to better improve their lives. So regardless of how you might feel about TikTok, let's say, I find it astounding, and I can't have nothing but envy for some of the people that have gone and leveraged these platforms to make a living for themselves.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I know that there's this influencer on TikTok that just monetizes her cat all day for influencing purposes, right? And she makes $60,000 a year doing that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong here. Like,
Right.
That's crazy. Another person's making solid 6 figures. And this was not possible even 20 years ago. And that's amazing. Yeah. And I'd hate to go and close off kids from that economic opportunity and try to force them into the rigid 9-to-5 job because, we're worried about the downsides of social media, when I think that there are less restrictive means, processes that are available to tackle some of those more nuanced issues. We can't just be treating everything like we have a hammer and everything is a nail, right?
Yeah.
I think that we can do better than that. And I think that kids, young voters especially, expect more from their legislators when they're tackling these kinds of issues that are getting raised.
Now, with these 2 laws that will go into effect, like you said, in 2024, you're now looking at other states to see how they're responding. Are there states that have said, well, wait a minute, we want to do this too? Have you already heard about some of that happening?
Sure, there are a handful of other states that are looking to implement similar kind of laws, maybe not as extreme as Utah's. But, for example, really the one who was the problem child that was the origin story of this was California, which last year had passed the first in the nation kind of bill also for protecting children called the Age Appropriate Design Code bill. And this is not age verification, it's age assurance, and it's about, trying to get companies to do impact assessments and all this very, what you would expect from California, heavy-handed regulation and not really well thought out stuff in that respect. So they started it, and then Utah started it with the age verification kind of format, and then we're seeing a bunch of other states go and adopt, or rather introduce similar kinds of legislation that aim to either do parental consent, some kind of transparency, introducing lawsuits. Forget the legislative proposals. Some states are just like, yeah, we'll sue the social media companies too. Why not? So there's all kinds of things that are kind of stemming out of this kind of movement right now. And again, like I said, while I can understand why some people are having those kinds of feelings that are there, this is not the answer.
Yeah.
I think that we can hold 2 thoughts at the same time, that we want to protect our children and that these kinds of solutions are not the right answer, and that we can totally come to a place where we can have a solution that goes and respects the First Amendment rights of children, tries to protect them from the downsides of social media, and also doesn't go and, create an environment that makes it impossible for our technology sector, which has been one of the largest drivers for economic opportunity in the United States over the last 20 plus years. Talking about over $6 trillion of our U.S. economy is driven through the tech sector. So, I think that we need to be very cognizant about what are the downfalls of bad proposals here in terms of the economic impact on the United States, as well as on our expression rights, more broadly speaking. So I think that there's a lot of trade-offs here, and it's a fascinating conversation. And, we're going to be here going and talking about it wherever the time is.
The other thing, James, I'm thinking the parents need to know, as well as the kids, that at this time between this bill being signed and it going into effect, they have to be very careful about the scams. You're going to get scams saying, to get verified, this is what you need to do. Send your social security number, your driver's license. I see that to be a big issue here. Yeah.
100%. You got to be careful about identity theft. And I think more broadly speaking too, again, good intentions and all that, but I can't help but think that there are some legitimate privacy concerns because while
Yeah.
Utah might not be willing to do it, I can see another state more easily being willing to go and use this kind of a proposal to start targeting people based off of the fact that we know that their online identity is now linked to an actual person. And we're de-anonymizing the internet. We're unmasking people, if you will. And I think that we've got to be very worried about that side of the equation, especially in this hyper-polarized environment right now where we're in, where we have the government that's targeting individual speech, let's say through the Twitter files conversation to some degree. I think that we've got to be very careful about what degree of power we're willing to give the government, because there's always a chance, and it's a non-zero chance, like it will probably happen at some point, that the government's original mission will start getting some scope creep, and they'll go well beyond whatever the original intention was.
Absolutely. Well, James Czernowski, thank you so much for coming on. Now, if our listeners would like to follow you on social media, is it James CZ19?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at JamesCZ19. That's where you can keep up with all my thoughts on all things tech, as well as any media hits and other things that I have going on.
Some great stuff. We'd love to have you on the show again. Some great information there. James, thank you so much. And definitely let's continue to talk about this.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back with more of Tech Talk Radio. Remember, you can find us on the World Wide Web at techtalkradio.com. You could subscribe to our shows right there. Also, check out our YouTube page whenever you do a segment for Fox, and we're going to be putting more video up there on YouTube, so subscribe. You can do that all right there. And back with more of Tech Talk Radio.
And now, back to Tech Talk Radio.
So when we were talking about the show for this week, it actually came up as a fact that I knew the guys were going to be out this week, and then they said, oh, dude, you've got to run this interview. So I'll tell you what happened. We've talked about drive recovery in the past. You know, you get an old hard drive, you pull it out of a machine, maybe the machine dies, but you don't want to give away the hard drive, so you just, put it in a corner. Maybe, hopefully, you made a backup of that at some point, or maybe you thought you were going to get back to it later. And there's some great products in the market. If you've got that old hard drive tower, even an old laptop sitting there, you might have a hard drive in it. There could be stuff on there that you might want. Documents, photos, audio, video, the whole bit. We have a couple of devices to make it easier. Kingwin. They make a really good product that will allow you to connect via USB to an old hard drive. Doesn't have to be in the computer. Makes it super easy. There's a couple other products on there. Sabrent makes a docking station. The other day, I was going through the storage shed, and I saw a box, and opened the box, and I saw a drive in it. What's on this drive? So I brought it in. It was the older drive style, so I connected it up to the Kingwin connector and fired it up. Suddenly I saw the drive, and I looked at the drive, and I thought, oh my, this is the old Tech Talk Radio shows from 1996. Now, I'm not going to just throw old shows at you, but we're going through this, and I'm finding some great interviews that we had done over the past. And you would think, well, how entertaining can they be, other than the fact that my voice is up a few octaves? Because, I hadn't been in broadcasting all that long, not even 10 years at that point. And I thought, well, let's listen to some of these. And I told the guys about one of them that I found. Bill Grace, who was a part of our show, was one of those that was just very innovative. And he found the program called Shoutcast that could stream to Winamp devices MP3 audio. We were one of the first shows in Palm Springs that was streaming our show. And we had people that would listen from all around the country. And it just made it so neat to be so accessible that way with some of the shows. Well, there's some guys who wrote a book, Justin Frankel, the guy behind Winamp, and Ben Sawyer, great author who put together other books before. And they talked about, they've mentioned us in one of their books, Tech Talk Radio, the show that gets it, because we were streaming via Shoutcast. We had Ben Sawyer on the show talking about their first book, which was published by Muska and Lipman back in May of 1999, called MP3 Power with Winamp. The guys requested it. I thought it was pretty cool to hear it again, and I don't think it's really been around for many, many, many years since the old Tech Talk site went away. So we're giving it to you right now, our discussion with Ben Sawyer about MP3. Taking you back a few years.
There's a new book out on the market. You can get it through Amazon.com, right through our website at techtalkradio.com. So many places to get it, and you've got to have it. It's written by Justin Frankel, who is the creator of Winamp, Dave Greeley, and Ben Sawyer, who joins us on the phone line. Ben, welcome to Tech Talk with Mike and Andy.
Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Good. It's a beautiful day here.
Now, you're out in Portland, Maine?
Yes.
It must be gorgeous there. We're dealing with a 110-degree temperature.
Well, we're not. But give me a call in January when it's like 10 below, and you can laugh at me.
There you go. Thank you. That'll be fair.
I'll go skiing that day.
Now tell us, what made you guys decide to put together a book on MP3?
We love music. My business partner, Dave Greeley, and I are just huge music fans. Dave is a huge Pearl Jam fan, and Pearl Jam actually allows their fans who tape the concerts to tape trade using the MP3 format. I'm always on the lookout for exciting new technologies, especially something that piques a personal interest of mine, and definitely music being one of them. When I found out about MP3 and Winamp, well over 2 years ago, I was just hooked, and we kept playing with it and watching Justin build out the features in the player, and then obviously Shoutcast started to come along. We had heard about it, and other things, encoding, and as you get into something, you start to learn more and more about it. And we write books is one of the things that we do, consulting and other things. And I kept saying to Dave, I said, we got to find a way to do a book about this because we both love it so much, and there's really a lot to learn and write about here. And so then I started talking to Justin and the folks at Nullsoft about the idea about teaming up our company and their expertise and saying, let's go take this to a publisher. And we found a smaller computer book publisher in Cincinnati that is run by somebody sort of basically younger than me, and I'm not that old. And so he was definitely into the idea. It's MP3 and digital music and everything is a very youth-oriented technology on the internet. 2/3 of Winamp's user base are under the age of 26. So immediately we all got it, and we ran with it. And Justin and the guys at Nullsoft were extremely supportive. Justin obviously co-authored the book. He tech edited every chapter to make sure we were as accurate as we could be.
Yeah.
And that's tough for Justin. I mean, the guy is coding, an immense amount of time every day, and he's so busy. I mean, we had to finally come up with like a little code to put in the subject of the email so we would know out of his 400 emails that I was trying to get a question answered so I could get a chapter completed. And it turned out great. I've written a few computer books, and this is one that I'm, personally really proud of.
I think the Winamp program itself is so much fun, not only because it just sounds so damn good, but also because people can create their own skins and create these I don't want to call them screensavers because that's really doing them an injustice, but graphics that go along with the music that are just awesome.
Imagine a lava lamp that reacts to every pulse of your subwoofer, and for people who haven't seen the visualization plugins, you now start to get the idea. I grew out of my phase in life where I would enjoy something like that with the aid of something, but it's now I just love sitting there and staring at everything that it can do because it's so synced. And when you see that what Winamp can do, that's really why we called it MP3 Power. I mean, the idea is that MP3 is a format, but MP3 Power is sort of like representative of the revolution that MP3 represents with the combining of a computer and music and what you can do. And Winamp is really at the crossroads of that. It isn't just a music player. If you're using Winamp and you're listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
If you've never used Winamp, what you have to understand is all of a sudden this program comes along and it allows your computer to take that music and do stuff with it. Now, if you just want to listen to it, that's fine. But if you want to start combining computer graphics with it, or start applying DSP plugins so that like you can make it sound like it's you're listening to it in a sewer pipe, or you're listening to it in a rock stadium, or you want to add vinyl. One of Dave's personal favorites is the vinyl razzle, so it sounds like you're listening to an old vinyl record. And him being a Pearl Jam fan, he's got a vinyl bias, and so. All of a sudden, MP3 is about enabling power to the music. It gives you more control. There'll be purists who are like, you buy the music, you listen to the music, you don't do anything else with it.
Right.
But personally, I'm the kind of person who believes in the interactivity of music, that music is something for you to play with like clay and change it and do things with it. And every time you use a new visualization plugin, it almost like takes that whole library of songs that you may have encoded from your CD collection and makes them new all over again. It's like, oh, let's see what this does with it, and let's see what this does with it. And Shoutcast does that. Shoutcast is, we can get to that in a second, is allows you to broadcast whatever you're listening to on your personal player on your computer to the rest of the web. And I can take old songs or old comedy routines that I have from my CD collection, and I might just shoutcast to two friends, and I'll email them and say, hey, I'm up, listen. And these are, songs or comedy bits I've heard like 100,000 times. But the fact that I know somebody else is on the other end of the line listening with me, it's like seeing a movie with friends again that you've seen and they haven't, and you're still laughing because you know they're laughing. And that's what MP3 Power as a premise is about. It's about the fact that this technology marries your computer with music and just gives you this incredible enabling opportunity to just have a ball.
I think that there's going to be a lot, and I'm sure you have also taken a look at where this technology is going and what it can do. I mean, there's so many things that have been possible that have been held up in the courts because of the RIA and everything that went on with Diamond and everything else, that I think we could be at the point where we could have MP3 players in our car.
Oh, we do. I mean, there are MP3. If you go to mp3car.com, there is a community of people who are devoted to building like Linux boxes. I mean, heaven forbids we use Windows in a car. There's a whole new meaning to the word crash.
Yeah, you crash
it. Screen of death.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, it's like that old joke. I'm sure everybody's gotten in their email where, what if Windows was a car?
Yeah.
But the basic idea is people are taking this technology and running with it. It is a revolution. It really is. I mean, this book could be the Mao's little red book of the MP3 revolution, and MP3 is the perfect net technology. It's something that everybody can kind of buy into and run with and do their own thing. So people are building their own car stereo systems, and now companies are coming out with their own packaged versions rather than the do-it-yourself kit. And then there's the Rio, and some of this got held up in courts, but to step back from a second about that, it's really the broader issue of, can you, as an industry, can you fight technology, or do you have to embrace and run with it? And that's what, that's really a philosophical argument that the opponents of MP3 just haven't quite understood, that you can't fight this with legal court rulings. You have to understand that this is going to radically change the way we work with and make a business out of the music industry. Yeah. And so they're going to have to embrace it. And I always say that the technology is not going to change. It's the business model and the business system and the way we work with it is going to change. And that's what we're seeing. And now that some of these court cases have been lost, we're starting to see the floodgates. I mean, there was the Rio Portable was like the first guy out in the road.
Right.
And then he almost got slammed. He almost was roadkill. But all of a sudden, the chicken made it to the other side of the road, and now there's a whole hen house ready to go. I mean, there's going to be about 8 or 10 of these players out by Christmas, and they're going to be, all over the place, and everybody's going to be using it. I walk around with my Rio, and people just see it and go, what is that? They think it's one of those just little FM tuner ones, and when I start telling them what it is, people get it. I've never seen a technology like the Rio or any kind of MP3 portable device where you meet people who are not into technology, people who kind of look down on like a Palm Pilot and say, oh, God, you geek. You show them a Rio, you tell them about MP3, and they get it. And then just like their eyes open, they're like, I want one.
Well, and just wait till they put the headphones on.
Right.
Well, everybody relates to music.
I'll be out and I'll bump into some friends and I'll go, hey, and I'll just hand them the headphones and I'll go, what do you think this is? And they go, I don't know. It sounds like a CD. And I'm like, no. And then I tell them, and it's MP3. When you show somebody Winamp on a computer and you show them what you can do, and you start showing them everything that MP3 enables, when you do it, people get it. Music is so simple to understand, and people understand what they've been allowed to do with music with the current, with a CD player or with their Walkman. And when they see what a computer and Winamp and the MP3 format and all the other things that have embraced this open revolution of music on the internet, they just get it. And it's the kind of thing that really, opens people's eyes to what really the real future of computers is going to be about. It's not about, sitting around typing Microsoft Word documents all day. It's going to be sitting around playing with music in whole new ways and doing things. And this is what's so exciting about this and about a lot of things like this that we see on the internet.
Now, you mentioned that there is a younger segment that is using MP3 audio. I know I love it. I have a great time with it for some of my radio archives and everything else. But I think the older segment who have vinyl records and have 8-tracks, even reel-to-reels, may find that they can get new life out of that stuff or preserve this stuff so that, they always have an archive of it. You look at the size of hard drives now, they're huge. And the size of an MP3 file is minimal compared to a WAV file, and it sounds 20 times better.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about this, even for CDs, out there in Radio Land, raise your hand if you thought like CDs were supposed to last forever. We're all waking up to the fact that that myth is now wrong. It's like they're only supposed to last like 30 years or something like that.
Yep.
And because they've cheapened the technology. I think when you first bought a CD when it came out, it probably was really, really good. But now it's just like those things are more plastic than they are anything. And reel to reel, I've got a lot of old vinyl records from when my father was a jazz disc jockey, and I'm starting to compile those into MP3s. As an archival material, it's amazing because you don't throw out your reel to reels, but what if you only had to play them once every 10 years to kind of make sure the archives were all in good shape? And then everything was digitally encoded, and you could just press a button and get what you wanted and create a randomized playlist of 10,000 minutes of music. I mean, that's what this is about. I mean, it for people who have that kind of stuff, it's an archiving medium, and it makes it all new again because they can go to it so quickly. And for people who are into music, it's a new way to live. It's so many things to so many people, but it's around something that we're all intrinsically in love with, which is listening to music, whether it be classical or techno or whatever it is you listen to. And that's what's so great. And
Ben, the book is almost 300 pages of just everything you'd want to know about MP3. For somebody who doesn't know anything about it now, will they find the tools necessary to get up and going with it?
Absolutely. We definitely wrote the book for people who are fans of Winamp and MP3 already, because there is so much for them to learn as well. But we didn't give up on one of the true missions of the book, which is to take somebody who has heard about MP3 because they've read, it's been in Time and Newsweek and on CBS Evening News, and I'm sure you guys have been talking about it, and people are talking about it just, in conversation, and somebody might say, well, what is this? This has got to be something pretty amazing. So we know that there are a lot of people we hope are going to get this book and who would say, I know nothing, and I'm turning open page 1. Make sure I'm okay by page 300. And so we do a lot. We have a lot of introductory material in there. We never start at step 8. We always start at step 1. But at the same time, we also go very, very in-depth so that we don't give up on the legions of fans of Winamp and MP3 who are like me. They're such a fan. They want to know every last little nook and cranny that they can get. So I think we did both. Well, the book's just getting out to stores now, and we're getting some really good feedback from people. And so I think that both beginners and experts alike will like what we've done.
It comes with a CD that has Winamp shareware on it. Also comes with Shoutcast. Now, we mention all the time that we're broadcasting via Shoutcast. Can you explain a little bit about that technology for our listeners who don't know about it? And did this come from Justin Frankel?
Yeah, Shoutcast is a great story. Justin is a fan of a certain radio program out of L.A. that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, called Love Lines, which actually is on MTV. Dr. Drew and Adam, the hosts of it, are just great, and it's a funny show. And he was lamenting that he couldn't get it where he lived in Arizona, so he wanted to figure out a way where somebody could be listening to any kind of music stream, whether it be MP3 or something coming in live through their computer, and could broadcast that to a friend anywhere else on the internet. And he sat down and he started looking at his whole base of programming and knowledge about MP3 and the internet, and he said, well, what if I could take anything that is playing personally on my Winamp player and just with a few little configurations and a little bit of extra software that you run called a Shoutcast server that you can run on your machine. If you can run Winamp, you can run the Shoutcast server plugin. And what if I could make it so that anything you're listening to, somebody else, as long as they know how to connect to your machine, can listen to it too? And from that was born Shoutcast. From that incessant need of Justin to listen to love lines, we get one of the most incredible pieces of software in the last 2 or 3 years of the internet. And what Shoutcast is, it really does. It allows you to share what you're listening to. It's what we would call a micro broadcasting radio solution. And while it can scale very far up, it really is meant to be a personal, what I would call personal radio broadcasting tool. And it uses the MP3 format, which the great thing about that is it gives you very good quality for the level of stream that you're running at, meaning how fast you're able to pump that stream out over the internet given your bandwidth. It can give you really good sounding quality for what you're able to do because of the MP3 compression, and it's very, very easy to configure. It's not completely easy. I mean, you need a little bit of instructions, and we include all of that in the book, and you can also get some basic version of that on the shoutcast.com website. But when I started working with it, it only took me like 10 minutes to get up and running with it, and I had like 4 or 5 of my friends listening to what I was listening to. And it's powerful. And what's powerful about it is really simple, and I said it before. It's always fun to listen to music that you've heard over before when all of a sudden you know you're sharing it with people who maybe never heard what you listen to, what your personal tastes in music are. And the ability to select and program and tell and say to people, this is what I want to share with you, this is what I think is really cool in music. It's fun. I mean, it makes everything new again, and it is loads and loads of fun.
Now, we of course, use both Shoutcast and Real Audio. Would Real Audio be considered a competitor then to Shoutcast, or are you like the way we think? Really, it blows away Real Audio.
I think that they're two different products in some ways. I have to credit Real. You know, they saw the MP3 thing exploding in their face, and they haven't been as good as they probably could have been, but they've really started to come over to the MP3 side of things, and Rob Glazer has taken that torch as best they can and is starting to run with it. They did buy Zing, which makes probably the best and easiest to use encoder, which is the program you use to turn a WAV file into an MP3 file. But Real, as a solution for very high-end broadcasting, we say thousands and thousands of streams and certain types of things, like certain types of other greater types of broadcasting needs, like the Real Pix and the Real Flash and a lot of and video and other things, is a more complete solution for what we would all call webcasting. And there's a lot of reasons you use that, and we go into like some of the differences. And Shoutcast is more aimed at people who are really trying, I won't say small streams, because Shoutcast can really, if you know what you're doing, you can scale it up to, hundreds of people listening at once.
Right.
But what Shoutcast is really meant to be, it's really aimed at the smaller to medium-sized market, and especially the personal market, you and I as users. We're not going to necessarily go out and use the Real server. It's a lot more cumbersome to use and set up and configure, and it doesn't really run as well under Windows 98 or 90 instead of NT for the personal user. And so I think you will find more and more individuals will use Shoutcast-style technology, but Shoutcast is not necessarily going to be the good riddance of Real. And I think that both Justin and Real both understand that, and you'll see the products maintaining their positions.
Now, I saw a message from Justin on the Shoutcast site said that he got complaints that people were saying that his software wouldn't be able to handle a large number of streams, and so he ran some tests and was able to stream over 1,500 off of one computer with only like 14% utilization.
Yeah, and that was actually Tom Pepper who did that test, and Tom is the co-producer of Shoutcast with Justin. Justin's definitely the main driving force. Tom is the sort of systems guy, and Tom did that test. And there's a difference between when we talk about scalability of users and CPU utilization, to get really technical here for a second, and when we talk about scalability in terms of what you're trying to do as an enterprise on the web and what kinds of features you need and things that you need for manageability and other things. And Shoutcast is one thing that we have to all remember is that Shoutcast can scale users and can scale other things, but it's still new, and it will evolve and grow, and there are other things that Real Audio offers people who are streaming various content onto the web that maybe Real Audio's useful for. My personal preference is, unless you have a real need for Real Audio, you'll know who you are and why you need it. And pretty much everybody else should be playing with Shoutcast and the tools it offers, especially individual users. It's a very, very elegant solution. And the great thing about Shoutcast is that it broadcasts content that is already in the MP3 format, so you don't have to re-encode all these files in all kinds of different formats in order to support different types of streaming solutions. And so Shoutcast has a lot of really good reasons to use it. But that whole scalability argument that erupted on the web is, to me, it's just missing the whole point.
Yeah. The book, MP3 Power with Winamp, of course, a full book of everything you need when you're going to be doing MP3 and you want to get a site that does Shoutcast. You got those tools included as well. You also have a couple other books that you've written, Creating GeoCities Websites. And there's another one in there that I can't remember right off the bat.
Creating stores on the web might have been the other one that we were talking about. The GeoCities book, again, it's the same premise as the MP3 Power book. Basically, we feel that there are a lot of people out there that are embracing the homepage building movement with GeoCities instead of maybe making it on their own or something like that. And GeoCities offers a lot of specific things that make building web pages or personal home pages fun. And so we went out and tried to really describe the GeoCities process of building a website and all the different types of things that GeoCities offers you. And you'd be surprised at the kinds of neat little things that GeoCities offers people that are useful to learn about. And we talk about empowering that. It's not a book about building home pages like a generic homepage building book.
Right.
It's a book about using GeoCities to build a homepage and using the special features they do. And creating stores on the web is aimed at smaller store owners. We really here at my company like to try and empower individuals to use computers because we think that's a heck of a lot more fun than empowering Fortune 500 companies to struggle with the year 2000 problem.
There you go. All right, now we got Dave on the line. Dave wanted to ask you a question. Dave, welcome to Tech Talk with Mike and Andy.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here. Hey, Winamp rocks. I got to know. I missed some of this, so on your book, you got, does that come with like a CD or a floppy with, maybe extra skins or other info?
Yeah, absolutely. We put the CD together, and we did two things. One, anybody who knows the MP3 movement knows that this software moves really quickly. Justin gave us an early version of what is now Winamp 2.20, 2.23. It's on there. But we also have links via web pages that are the interface for the CD to all the latest versions. So if you get the book and you look at the software and you're wondering if there's a later version, just click on the link and you'll be able to download it. But we also included about a dozen skins, personal favorites of mine and Justin's. We included a bunch of really interesting plugins, and we included MP3 Spy 1.0, and there's MP3 Ticker, which allows you to publish your playlist from a Shoutcast station on the web. There's a lot of really good tools, and there's links to other stuff or to the latest versions of those tools if the version on the CD is a little dated. So we really try to make sure that the CD and the links that we provided get you the most current, best things as far as MP3 tools go.
Excellent. It's MP3 Power with Winamp. $29.99 is the cover price. I'm sure you can find it marked off a little if you go through Amazon.com and some of the other places as well. Ben, I want to thank you again for joining us. We'd love to talk to you again sometime really soon.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to be doing more in the music space, and we hope the book sells well, and we'll hopefully be out with new versions. And we, on mp3power.com, we'll have updates, and the guys at Winamp will be doing stuff too. And just everybody get on board with this. It's just loads of fun.
Can you give us a little insight on the AOL merger, and is that going to affect it at all?
It's going to be good. People have asked me about this. They were shocked when it happened, and look, it's the American dream. 20-year-old kid creates one of the greatest pieces of software in the world and becomes an instant millionaire and gets the resources of what is really a very good company. I know we've all had problems with AOL, and there was some speed bumps when they bought ICQ, but I still use ICQ, and it works better than it worked before. Yeah. There are going to be some speed bumps, but they also bought the guys from Spinner and those guys who really understand music on the web. And now Justin doesn't have to worry about anything. He can sit down and he can create great Winamp software people, this is a good thing. They didn't sell it to a company that is going to let it sit idly by. And to Justin's credit, it's really easy to walk away when you make that kind of money for selling a great piece of software. But I've been talking to the guys, and you can go look at his website and look at his plan. He is already hard at work at the next version of Winamp for the fall, is my guess when it'll be released. That's not any Nullsoft information.
Right.
And look, he's going to do it. This is great. The program's great. MP3 is great. People should be really, really happy about this.
Very cool. Ben, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a lot.
And that was our discussion with Ben Sawyer, MP3 Power with Winamp. More of Tech Talk Radio standing by. Find us on the web at techtalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tech Talk Radio. And don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel with more videos going to be coming there very soon.
Now, back to Tech Talk Radio.
Well, in delving through our hard drive, we found another interview of somebody that I actually respect and admire, Michael Giacchino. Michael's a composer that has worked on so many projects over the years. And back in 2006, I think we talked to Michael about his work on video games and doing the composition musically for some of the great video games. So what's it like? What takes place when they go to do this? We find out with Michael Giacchino on this week's Tech Talk Radio.
I'm excited because I'm a big fan of the show Lost. I love movie soundtracks. And one of the guys that's come on the scene recently is a guy by the name of Michael Giacchino. He created the music for the Medal of Honor series. They've even put out CDs for it. And we've got him standing by on the line. Michael, it's great to talk to you. How you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, Andy?
Doing phenomenal. It's great to talk to you. I'm always excited when EA is putting out a new game title with your music.
You're in Arizona?
Yeah, Tucson, Arizona. You ever been out here?
I have been to Tucson. Mostly, though, I go to Tempe. I have a cousin that lives in Tempe that I visit quite often.
Now, let me ask you, Michael, how did you latch on to the EA franchise for the Medal of Honor series?
It happened a long time ago. I was working at EA as a producer at the time, and I was producing some games that one of which never got made, one of which came out. But it was at the very kind of beginning of the DreamWorks Interactive days, and Spielberg was around a lot, and there was a game called The Lost World that we were making, and one of the producers who was of that game, who was a good friend of mine from the Disney days of working in Disney Interactive, he was producing this game, The Lost World, and he said, look, we need some music for this demo we're having for Spielberg, and can you throw something together tonight, because we have a big presentation tomorrow. He's coming in to look at our animation and our character designs and all this. So I threw together this little piece of music for the Compy. I don't know if you remember the game, but there's a little dinosaur called the Compy, and cute, but they're vicious.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wrote a piece of music for that, and they had that in their demo meeting with him, which I was not a part of that meeting. And I remember being upstairs, and the phone rings, and it was my friend Patrick, and I was like, well, how'd it go? And he said, well, Steven wants to see you. Can you come down right now? And I was like, oh, boy. So, okay. So I went downstairs, and at the bottom of the escalator, there was Steven Spielberg just waiting there, and it was he introduced himself as if he needed to, told me how much he loved the music, and that he wanted to make sure this was done with a live orchestra and all of these things. And that kind of set the whole thing in motion for me and for my career, that moment right there. And then when Medal of Honor came up, he said, well, we should have Michael. Are we going to have Michael do this too? And it just kind of became my thing.
That's cool.
So I was kind of, like I said, at the time I was a producer in games, trying to become just a composer full time.
And he wanted that full orchestra for that, and you're still utilizing full orchestras for creating this, correct?
Absolutely. No, even at that time for me, it was all I ever wanted to do was write for full orchestra. I mean, and I just loved that whole aspect of movies. That I grew up listening to soundtracks and classical music and jazz, and just live musicians for me are where it's at. And I wouldn't ever want to work on something that didn't have live musicians, because there's just something not exciting to me about sitting in a room with a synthesizer.
Like the game, how does that process work?
Basically, what I do is sit down with the team, and in this case, the Medal of Honor Airborne guys, Patrick Gilmore, who was my main contact on this, and one of the executive producers, we would sit down, and they would do these, what we call playthroughs of the game, and videotape them. And then we'd make QuickTime movies of those, and we would watch these QuickTime movies of the different areas of the game that we decided needed music.
Right.
And then we would talk emotionally about, okay, what is happening here? What is it we want to feel? What's the overarching storyline? You know, the story is king when it comes to video games, as it is when you're working on a film. I mean, you have to be in sync with that story.
Yeah.
And the guys at EA working on these Medal of Honor games, that is their number one concern, is the storytelling and, you know, and the gameplay. Those two things are what make their games work. And that's what I love about them, is that they actually, you know, there are some companies out there making games that just care about the gameplay. But these guys care about both the gameplay and the storytelling. And for me, that's where I always want to work. So when we sit down, we actually figure out what is that storyline and how is it rising, how is it falling, and how can we, you know, hopefully create a musical arc that'll lead us to the end of the game in a big way. Just a lot like spotting a movie.
Who do you use as far as your orchestra? Are these musicians that come from other areas, or do you tend to work with the same ones, like for some of the musical scores that you do for movies?
Well, yeah, like for Medal of Honor Airborne was played pretty much by the same guys that played Mission Impossible or The Incredibles or Ratatouille or you know, any of the other movies that I've worked on. It's a group that I like to stick with, and I've been working with them for a long time now here in LA, and they're LA musicians, and they're kind of like hired guns, you know.
Yeah.
They come in, you need an orchestra, you have a group that you're close with, you call them in, and the great thing about it is they sit down, they don't know what they're about to play when they come in that morning. They've never seen the music before.
Yeah.
So when they sit down to record at 10 o'clock and when the light goes on and we start recording, that's the first time they've seen that music. So They have to get it right. There's no rehearsal days, anything like that.
Do you do a lot of stings in it so that way when something happens in the game, it kind of jumps to that?
Yeah, we do a little bit of that. There are certain things that we know are recurring kind of events, and we want to make sure that those are highlighted in a certain way. Absolutely, yeah. There's definitely and sometimes it's more than just a stinger. It's a musical phrase, or it's a, you know, there's different ways to handle it depending on what it is.
I remember the first time I played the series, it was one of those where the music actually gives you, and it helps. It gives you the goosebumps when you do something that is good, or you reach that point in the game where you've completed. You know,
right? Exactly.
It's a great feeling.
That's it. You know, music is the great. It helps you decide what you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
So you could go wrong in so many ways writing music, and that's the tightrope act. You want to make sure that whatever that emotion is you're locking into is exactly what needs to be communicated for the game. You know, and so like I said, it's you could go left or right at any time, but the idea is just be true to the game and the story, because it's easy to kind of just say, oh, I like what I'm doing here, so I'm just going to go off on this tangent. So you got to always stop yourself from that.
Well, the music was so well received with the first title. I remember they actually put out a CD for that. Are they going to be doing the same for Airborne?
Well, they put out CDs for all of them, and then for Airborne, it's up on iTunes.
I got to tell you, I went out and I purchased the MI3 soundtrack. Great score.
Oh, thanks.
on that. I really like that. I'm also a big fan of Lost. Are you still involved in that?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just got back from Hawaii, where I was working with the Honolulu Symphony last Saturday night. This past Saturday, we did a whole night of Lost music with the Honolulu Symphony.
Oh, I got goosebumps. That's cool.
Yeah, so that was an amazing time, because everywhere in Hawaii, outdoors, underneath their Hollywood Bowl type shell, and with the wind blowing and just the moon is shining. I mean, it was just an amazing setting. So that was the first time we ever did that for the show, and it was pretty exciting. It was a lot of fun.
Is it tough for you as the composer for the music when people know that you do this, that you have to field the calls from them saying what's happening in next season?
Oh, everyone always asks if I know that, and as a matter of fact, I just saw on some blog yesterday. One of my assistants pointed it out to me that. They were having a discussion. How much does Michael Giacchino know? You know, how much does he know? And do you think he's lying when he says he doesn't know anything? And
that's funny.
And the truth is, I don't know anything, and I don't want to know anything, because I feel like my writing needs to be in the moment of the story. And if I know what's happening ahead of time, I'll subconsciously, I could give that away in the music, or So my goal is to always be as kind of in the moment as the characters are, and I think it works best that way. So, yeah, I know nothing.
It just creates and adds to the suspense. It's great stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in the game title as well, Medal of Honor Airborne. And, Mike, I got to tell you, it's great to talk to you. And if you ever do come out to Tucson, we're treating you to a steak dinner if you want to come out.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.
Forgot that he did the music for Mission Impossible 3 as well. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back with more of Tech Talk Radio. A security alert. If you're using a certain product you want to be careful of, we'll tell you about that coming up.
And now, back to Tech Talk Radio.
All right, we're back real quick. I wanted to let you know about a problem security-wise. Hackers apparently have found a way to get into your garage. If you use the Next brand of smart garage openers, there's a problem. They found an exploit, and they could open your garage door remotely. So it's something you want to look at. Vice has the article. You can check it out at vice.com. Or if you have the Next brand of smart garage door openers, make sure you visit their website. That's it for this week's Tech Talk Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can text us 520-777-9580 or drop us an email, techguys@techtalkradio.com. Have yourselves a great week.